So, we might go back to the dragonfly here for a second. Can we guess, can we use, if there's a skill or there's a principle to predict what's happening during chaos or predict what's going to happen on the other side to take advantage of it? Is there any science or even anecdotes of how we can leverage this as a tool once we've got our mindset right that we should perhaps not all the time, but maybe some of the time we should run into chaos as opposed to running away from it?
So here's after talking to all kinds of experts over the past few years and trying to come up with a set of rules or guidelines or best practices for dealing with chaos, I came up with what every good business book writer should do, which is an acronym, and I call it SAFE, which is you first need to be able to spot an opportunity. And the best way to spot an opportunity is through what rhetoricians call exigence. And this, I'm summarizing what economists have talked about, but I define this as exigence is an urgent need. So you need to be looking at two things. What do people need and how urgently do they need it? And that tends to happen most during times of chaos. So spotting an opportunity, that's the S. You need to be able to analyze the opportunity. And one way to do that is by this takes some skill, obviously, to be able to compress the data. And I actually interviewed people who have been involved in data compression of music, including the people who came up with the MP3. They're able to see what doesn't belong in the information. And I spent a lot of time studying how Dwight Eisenhower planned D-Day. He was taking just this confusion of information and opinion, and he had to boil it down into the moment to invade France with the Allies. That's analyzing, that's A. So we got the S and the A. Thirdly, you need to know whether you actually fit that occasion. And again, I decided to apply a rhetorical principle called to propond, which is the art of actually fitting into an occasion. Do you suit this opportunity, which is really important? And for that, you need to be able to conduct a really good audience analysis to see if you fit into that, among other things as well. E is extend. You need to be able to bring about an opportunity potentially, and then extend it when it comes about. The ancient Greeks actually thought this idea of seizing an occasion at a particular moment was so important. They actually had a god for it. The god was called Kairos, and Kairos was this beautiful young man with winged feet. And the most fashionable curly Greek hair in front, but he was entirely bald in back because Kairos ages quickly. He runs by and the moment is gone. One of the things you need to be able to do in order to seize an opportunity is to perform a kind of like a catalysis, which is by either increasing the confusion or sort of building a fence around it. And so I went through business history to see who did what, and fencing was by far the best way to do it. Inventing rules where there weren't any rules, principles where no principles, and so on. And then finally, beyond all that, SAFE, safe, I thought I had to add an H, which is in order for any of this really to work, you have to come up with sort of a habit of mind to be open to opportunities when they arise. So it's not a matter so much of predicting it. It's more a matter of envisioning the future during the most chaotic times. And that's what dragonflies do. But at the same time, we can do that by getting rid of some bad habits. One is we tend to focus too much on the past, and we tend to define the present too much in terms of what's good and bad, rather than just what we understand of the moment. And one of the things I found is that the most successful entrepreneurs, and this really surprised me, tend to score very high in what psychologists call openness. I use the term liberality, which means, when something happens that it seems frightening or confusing, people who don't have this trait of openness or liberality will say, "Whoa, this is bad," or fearful. People who have a liberal attitude or an open attitude will say, "That's interesting." That's the difference. And time and again, entrepreneurs deal with information this way. That information does not make them fear. It makes them feel more curious. So that's SAFEH.
Jay,
terrible acronym.
I think it's not the best acronym. I'm sure that another letter would make it make more sense. And you're the master at kind of pulling these together. I've got to say it, mate. I had to shut up then and just listen because there was I've got a bunch of notes here which we'll run through in a second. But one thing that stands out, because I want to get into survivor bias, whether this is just luck, whether people do this routinely. I want to touch on that with regards to chaos in a second. But a slight side note, and I'll drag it back into the conversation that we've been on the track of. Do you have a process, or is this something that comes natural, where you have the ability to, talking about chaos, talking about insects, the Greeks, different gods, all these different things. Your books talk about the Simpsons, cats, all different ways to. Clearly, it's an amazing way to teach and to train. And clearly, you've got that background in teaching as well. Do you do this naturally, being able to pull from different sources to use anecdotes, quotes, and different things, or do you consciously do this? Because I feel like even just a sales presentation, if we could pull like 3 or 4 different things out of the hat like you seem to do with all these different subjects, it would make a sales presentation 10 times more exciting in its own right.
Well, one of the things, in a way, my agent criticizes me for this because there's just too much, like this is you're confusing us. I'll tell you, before I answer your question, Will, I have to tell you another personal story because this is what occasioned this book in the first place. I've been thinking for years about one of the biggest blown opportunities on my part that kept me from being a billionaire. I'm laughing, but it's almost literally true.
Correct, crying inside.
I could have helped ruin the world and become fabulously rich back in the year 2000. This dates me, but I have to do it. I was working as vice president of content for what was called a .com back in the day. This is during the .com era, where I worked for a company and helped found this company that pulled together some 2,000 radio stations. We thought we had solved the problem of the internet, which is how do you get people on it? How do you attract people to your particular .com? And if you remember the Pets.com sock puppet, I mean, these companies were spending millions of dollars in advertising in places like the Super Bowl in order to attract people to their websites. We thought we had solved this problem in that we would create free websites for radio stations. We templated the websites around particular musical genres. And in return for which, the radio station would have to run these spots on the radio, attracting them to websites, where we would sell them cool new stuff like the filmless digital camera. And we would also make money through banner advertising and things like that, the stuff that existed at the time. Well, my job was to give people a reason to come to those websites. I quickly realized when I looked through all our audience data was that what our audience wanted was the most local kind of information. I had a staff of maybe 8 people. There's no way we could have produced local information for these 2,000 people, particularly, and they didn't want just local information. They wanted local information about their music, whether it was hip hop on the one hand or country on the other.
Sure.
I sat staring miserably out of my office window for weeks and weeks, months and months, thinking, I know there's an answer to this. I can't figure out what it is. Now, at the time, the internet was the Wild West. There were really no rules. It was every website for itself. kind of thing. Nobody knew what worked and what didn't. So this was chaos, the definition of chaos. Well, our 9/11 came along. We lost our funding. I was unemployed soon after. A year later, a Canadian programmer invented Friendster. And soon after that, you had MySpace, and after that, eventually Facebook and all the rest. And that was the answer. I probably still have the dent in my forehead from smacking it when I realized that the answer to the content was not to create it, but to allow users to create it. So that was an opportunity in the middle of chaos, and I failed to see it. If I had seen it, we had a whole great team of top programmers. If I had gone to them and convinced them that this was the way to go, we could actually have taken off better than Friendster, much better than MySpace. Why hadn't I thought of it? Like, what was I lacking? What skills was I lacking? And that's why I did this book. So my natural way of doing this is to just ask the universe, look at every possible source of information that would solve this particular problem. Why didn't I invent social media?